Chapter 42. Ayianna scratched Liam's ears. The silent stars sparkled in the dark expanse above, while a cool desert breeze whispered through the courtyard, much like the quiet pleas of the masses chained in their underground prison. She shuddered. Was her mother still among them? Had Saeed found her? She leaned back against the bench, and Liam dropped her muzzle into Ayianna's lap. They had made it to Bonzapur. Surely Saeed didn't expect her to continue on the quest. They had found the tonic. What help could she be? Wouldn't it be better to return with Desmond and rescue her mother? Ayianna? She started, her heart pounding against her ribs. At the entrance of the garden, Kale stepped out of the shadows and into the warm glow of the lanterns. She glanced at Liam and pursed her lips. Why didn't you warn me? Liam only cocked her head and nestled deeper into Ayianna's lap. What are you doing out here? Kale asked. I just needed some fresh air. He looked up at the sky and then back at her. Do you mind if I join you? She opened her mouth to speak, but the gleam of the golden bracing caught her eye and the words choked in her throat. She stood. I'm sorry. I can't. I have to go. Wait. His hand on her arm stayed her. Are you all right? She searched his eyes. The desire to pour her heart out to him overwhelmed her. I'm fine. Really, I have to go. He dropped his hand. You're not fine. I don't suppose I can lie to you, can I? She straightened. You probably already know what I'm thinking. I can't read your thoughts like the Nagiso can, but I can sense your emotions, the disturbance in you. Oh, she eyed him. Why can't I sense yours then? I shield myself. Can you teach me? He raised his eyebrows. Of course, but I thought you had to go. I do, but... She rubbed the bracelet against her wrist. I'm betrothed, and I shouldn't be talking to you. Desmond. The icy tone in his voice sent a shiver scurrying down her spine. She glanced away. Look, I have already told you, I don't have a choice. We always have a choice. She glared at him. Not for women. Even women have choices. He cocked his head. But are you prepared for the consequences? What's that supposed to mean? She ground her teeth. Why did he infuriate her so? No matter what you choose, there will be consequences, whether you choose to live a lie or seek the truth, whether you allow. I told him the truth, okay? She wrapped her arms around herself. It doesn't matter to him if I'm a stupid half-breed. Kale clenched his jaw. He nodded his hands atop his head and turned away. Tears sprang to her eyes. She whisked them away and started toward the exit. Ayianna. His voice was quiet. She halted. She ached to flee, but a deeper desperation rooted her to the ground. Don't ever refer to yourself as a stupid half-breed. She spun around. Why do you always make me so mad? If you were such good friends with my brother, why do you... The flood of tears burned her eyes. She steeled herself. She wasn't going to cry in front of him. She took a deep breath. Well, we've made it here, so now you won't be encumbered by me anymore. Is that what you want? I'll be going back with Desmond. She clasped her hands together. He's making the betrothal public tomorrow. No, he stepped closer. You can't. I thought you said I had a choice. You do. He lifted his hand as if to touch her, but then lowered it. Just don't decide too quickly. We're in the middle of a mess. There's no telling how it'll all end. Don't let Desmond force you into making a decision, or, he glanced away, or making you do something you might regret. If he truly loves you, he won't force you to marry him. His gaze returned to her, his eyes pleading. Promise me you'll wait until this is all over with. Ayianna searched his eyes and swallowed the emotions clogging her throat. Why should I? What does this decision have to do with you? Kale stepped aside and looked up at the starlit sky. I made a vow to your brother. Oh, Ayanna's heart sank. What had she expected? That he'd actually cared for her of his own accord? She was too tired to be angry. Teron asked me to give this to you. Kale untied the small leather pouch at his belt. He pulled out a silver ring and handed it to her. Teron's ring. Tears blurred her eyes as she rubbed the silver braided vines. Life had seemed so much simpler, easier when she had made it for him. She slid the ring on her forefinger and twisted it. He was with me when the battle horn was blown. Ayianna shook her head. She didn't want to relive the horror she found at Dagmar. Cale reached for her hands. His touch soothed her. He gave me this ring, he continued, his voice low. He said if anything should happen to him, that I should find you. Ayianna stared at the ground. Her mind swam with images of Dagmar and her brother's headless body. Her emotions catapulted her into a haze as thoughts and memories tumbled one after the other. Cale's touch anchored her to reality, and she drew comfort from his presence. She lingered. Why couldn't things have been different? You should know. He died valiantly, doing his best to protect my sister, and she raised her eyes, but a wave of anguish washed over her, burdened by guilt and condemnation. Suddenly she realized she was sensing Cale's emotions, something he had always blocked. Cale pulled away. She could no longer feel his pain, but the memory of it was enough. Her heart ached. She wanted to say something, to comfort him, but the words escaped her. He glanced at her neck. How's your wound? Well, Ayianna stammered and trailed her fingers through Liam's fur. He didn't need to know the truth. It's healing. That's good to hear. Are you having any luck with the tonic? She asked, glad to have changed subjects. I suppose. We have 3 ingredients to find. Cale leaned against the stone wall surrounding the garden. Eluith has translated it, but we still have to figure out the rest of the riddles. Even Vian came to help. She frowned. Does that mean we'll be leaving soon? Maybe in a week or 2, depending on how helpful the king's nephew is. The sooner we leave, the better. If we don't return with the tonic before Dirk and the Sorceress march to war, the Alliance won't have an army, and the whole of Nalu will be plunged into darkness. How comforting. I know, he shook his head. We'll need to map out our journey, gather supplies, and leave as soon as we can. He looked at her. I hear the Queen has arranged for you to do some training with her elite warriors. Ayianna nodded. A smile brushed his lips. Good. Although you shouldn't have to use the training, except maybe on Desmond if he doesn't behave. Very funny, but she didn't laugh. She mulled over the possibility of besting Desmond in a duel. No, she'd never be as good as he with a sword. The silence lengthened, and the mirth faded from Cale's eyes. I should go. I don't want you to get into any more trouble on my account. But he lingered, his eyes on hers. When we finish getting the tonic to Saeed, I will help you rescue your mother. I promise. Cale would, too. He turned and disappeared into the shadows. She scratched Liam's head and glanced up at the silent stars, now more confused than ever. Did she want to go on the quest? Well, Liam, perhaps we should get some sleep while we still have a bed to sleep in. After putting Liam up for the night, Ayianna made her way to her room. Her nerves had settled a bit, her heart lighter, but exhaustion muddled her mind. She slipped the gold bangle off and tossed it into the wardrobe. She didn't need to make a decision tonight. She twisted her brother's ring on her finger. Maybe Desmond would change his mind.